In 2017, Nintendo went through a real ugly divorce, and it was with a very nasty lady named the Nintendo Wii U. Ugh, she was ugly. She then proceeded to take half of her boss's salary and completely divided Nintendo as a whole, and was just very underwhelming. So Nintendo decided to ditch her and made love with a brand new console, the Nintendo Switch.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
Now, we all know how that story goes, and it leads into the present day, where Nintendo has decided to add another person to the beautiful love triangle, and that would be the handy dandy Nintendo Switch 2. So take a little step back to the past with me as we warm our way up for Nintendo Switch, and we'll take a look at Nintendo Switch back then compared to Nintendo Switch 2's reveal right now.
What the
Nintendo Switch 1's hype was absolutely nuts. We had so many bright and talented content creators back then making so much hype for the console, and again, we were coming out of the Wii U and 3DS era. This was the most hype that Nintendo had around that time. It was the golden era of hype, and unfortunately now we don't really have the same creators there. We've unfortunately lost a lot of great ones along the way. But the hype for Nintendo Switch 2 wasn't the same as 1, and it's really obvious if you take a couple steps back and look at the time frames that we were in. Nintendo Switch 1 had an insane production, and I mean to say this about not the Nintendo Switch 1 hype video, which still was well perceived, but we're talking about the actual Nintendo Switch presentation, which Nintendo brought out the big guns. We got information about the console. We received the release date of the console. We received pre-order date information about the console. We received information on region locking for the system, and we even received information on, hell, the contents of the console, which my big-headed ass at the time was shocked. I was like, oh, shit. They can do that? Whilst we have Nintendo Switch 2 over here with its grand same 1 hour-ish reveal where Nintendo revealed the date, but if you wanted to go and find anything about pre-order information or what the hell you even get in the box, good luck. You had to go out, you had to go on Twitter, you had to find some news source that you trusted instead of hearing it directly from Nintendo, and then you had to go and wait for a pre-order date that eventually got delayed due to economic events, and then you had to go and you had the choice to either wait in line at GameStop or take your risk going online and pre-ordering the system.
The game is fun.
The reveal for Nintendo Switch 1 also had a lot of notable games to it. I mean, we were bringing out the big guns, especially for the first party focused games. We had ARMS, we had a new Splatoon 2 game, Mario Odyssey. Hell, we were getting a Xenoblade announcement. They even announced the beginning trailer of the new Fire Emblem game. Everything was hype, and Nintendo fans were excited. The only thing that I can say in the Nintendo Switch 1 presentation that wasn't as strong as the 2025 presentation for Nintendo Switch 2 is that ultimately third-party support just wasn't there. Nintendo needed to win back these third parties, and while there were announcements here and there, we didn't really see all that much of gameplay for third parties outside of Skyrim and, you know, just a bunch of guys in suits talking about how they are developing for the Switch and glazing the newest console. Nintendo Switch 2's presentation had a really good mix of first-party titles and third-party titles. Not only were there a lot of smash hit first-party Nintendo games, but the third parties like, you know, Elden Ring, Cyberpunk, which is releasing on launch, new Deltarune announcements and gameplay, and just several other developers out there announcing these big hit titles playable on a portable slim handheld console. They were announcing stuff, and I gotta give the Switch 2 presentation some credit for that, because Switch 1, it lagged behind. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the energy Nintendo gave off from then to now, because I think this is a very important thing that people are starting to notice, and it's a bit of a tough pill to swallow. The presentation for Nintendo Switch 1 in 2017 had a lot of personality. We were coming out of the era of the Nintendo Wii U and Nintendo 3DS, where Nintendo took a step forward in terms of creating personality, not with just their characters like Mario and Bowser, but with actual developers and people involved with the console and the game's development at Nintendo. Even in the actual presentation, we saw so many notable faces such as Reggie Fils-Aimé, we saw Shigeru Miyamoto, we had Eiji Aonuma in there showing his face as well when they announced Breath of the Wild for Nintendo Switch. They also had Tatsumi Kimishima, who was, by the way, the 5th president at Nintendo Japan when they were doing the announcements for Nintendo Switch. But my favorite person out of that whole event was Yoshiaki Koizumi, who presented Nintendo Switch and the different ways of play that you could present and play it in. He had this kind of like smug but charismatic nature to him, and that's just not something we see much of in the Nintendo Switch 2 presentation. We got introduced to 3 new people at Nintendo, with that being Mr. Koichi Kawamoto, Tetsuya Suzuki, and Taoshiro Dota. But they just weren't that memorable. They were just very corporate, okay? If you're a person that enjoys just seeing game reveals like this and that, and you don't care about personality in people when they're working and making games for you, then these 3 new guys work just fine for you. But I like seeing the personality of the people who help make my games enjoyable. You just don't really get to see that at this Switch 2 presentation. They kind of, had their little moments here and there, but there wasn't anything too different about these guys, and it was kind of sad to see. Maybe we need a little bit more time for them to grow on us, but I also feel that this is a part of Nintendo's next biggest change, and it's that they're going to be shifting to a more corporate approach. I know a lot of you in the comments are going to go, well, duh, obviously, haven't you been with Nintendo for the past 8 years? Haven't you seen them be corporate with Nintendo Switch, where they did Mario 3D All-Stars and then delisted it, and then they did an exclusivity deal with Fire Emblem with the 30th anniversary collection? Oh, and back in the Wii U era when they completely destroyed Smash Bros in any way, shape, or form? Yes, I am aware. I know that this has been going on for a while, but that whole event was more of like a 7 out of 10 on the corporate greed scale. This Nintendo Direct takes that corporate greed scale that I was just talking about, and that takes it back up to a 10 out of 10. It just seems like Nintendo has the idea to take the corporate approach, and I don't blame them for it. They can sit back and they can make little upgrades over time and update their console to be more of what people are complaining about today, while still selling it at this massive price tag that they're still afraid to display. Look at this trailer. Look at this trailer right here. You see this? What is this right here? You know what needs to be there? Here, Nintendo. I'll help you out. Congratulations. It wasn't that hard, but they're playing the safe game, and that just is what a lot of people are noticing as well, that Nintendo is not going to be as confident. They're not going to be as descriptive as they was back in 2017 with the Switch 1 release. And for me, at least, it's kind of sad to see that, because we're probably going to be in a really rough road moving up if they do decide to make these console prices go up like they did with their accessories recently. And I'm not going to make this a controversial video about the price tag and everything. I'm sure you've heard a billion YouTube Nintendo content creators say the same damn thing 50 times, but we are moving into a new era with Nintendo Switch 2, and I'm excited for this console. Here's my long ass GameStop receipt right here. I am excited, and I'm constantly counting down the days till its arrival, and I can't wait to play the new games. But we have to step back every once in a while, and we have to look, and we have to see that Nintendo has changed, and this might be one of the changes that sticks around permanently. They might not be as willing to talk to us. Now that I got my Switch 2 though, I'm gonna gotta throw away my old console. You son of a bitch, come here.
Bye-bye.